Looking back, there was one moment that changed my life. It had been a long day. I was leaving the opera with my parents. We had to walk through a dark alley. A man approached us. He asked for my mother's pearls. There was a scuffle. A gun went off. That was the moment that made me the man I am today.
Wait a minute. That was Batman. Let's try this again.
So I got bit by a radioactive spider. Wait a minute. I was accidentally exposed to an insane level of gamma rays. No, that's not it either. I was a complete loser. That's the one right there. The year was 2015. Well, the world was obsessed with trying to get lips like Kylie Jenner and debating the color of this dress. 19-year-old Gabe was failing as a real estate agent, working part-time at night as an office cleaner after dropping out of high school. I knew that college wasn't an option because honestly, I hated studying. But I knew my life wasn't going in the right direction and I had to make some changes. It was around that time that somebody recommended the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Instead of listening to music one day, I made a decision that would change the rest of my life. I downloaded Audible and began listening to the book because reading was honestly out of the question because I only read pictures. That was the first step of a habit that would completely change my life, taking me from a directionless, clueless, unmotivated teenager to someone who has reached some level of financial independence and was able to leave their day job at 24.
Hey, listen, I quit.
The idea that the rich don't work for money, but they learn how to make money work for them was extremely appealing to me. I had been working at a job I didn't like since I was 11. And I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. But I also had almost no money, no real skills to speak of, and no idea what I should do with the rest of my life. As I was reading this book, I thought it was really weird how most people spend the best part of every day for the best years of their life working for money, and yet nobody takes the time to become financially educated and really study it. They didn't teach it in schools, and everybody I was talking to about it had never heard any of this stuff before. I began to be obsessed about learning about money. Every spare minute when I was working or driving or just hanging around the house, I was listening to more and more books. And as one book would lead me into the next book, I started to see that there were other paths that I could take, and I didn't have to do the normal find a good 9 to 5 and try to survive until I'm 65. Apparently I'm a poet. And as I finished each book, it led me into another book, and as I continued to grow the things that I was learning about, I realized that there was so much more opportunity out there than I thought. As I finished every book by Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I became obsessed with this idea of reaching financial independence by real estate investing, something I could do without any form of formal education. So I started to listen to more books on the subject and started to listen to a podcast called Bigger Pockets, where they talk about real estate investing. And after listening to over 100 episodes over a couple of months, they eventually had somebody on there who talked about the FIRE movement. So I went onto their podcast and listened to every episode that they had made. And as I learned about the financial independence and retire early movement and how all these people were retiring in their 20s, 30s, and 40s simply by living a different lifestyle than everybody else and making different decisions than everybody else, it really started to show me that I could actually do this, even as someone who had never earned more than the median salary. I listened to every book that they recommended and started to learn about the stock market and how to travel for free and lower my expenses, increase my income, and then how to invest that money that I was saving. After a few years of saving every dollar that I could and spending every minute that I could learning more about money, I finally took my entire life savings and I invested it into my first rental property. I was able to live in one of the units while the other 2 units covered all my mortgages, taxes, and insurance, allowing me to save over 75% of my income to put towards the next one. I knew that if I could do this a few more times, I would have enough passive income from these properties that I would be able to leave my day job, which was very unfulfilling, and do something that I was actually passionate about, even though I still didn't know what that was. Over those few years, I started to see my life transform. My communication skills improved. I went from a shy kid who was literally too scared to go up to a counter and order French fries and absolutely hated being on camera, which made B-roll incredibly hard to find over the past few years, to someone who is actually on camera and talks for a living. If you had told me I'd been doing this a few years ago, I would have laughed in your face. I would not have believed how far I was able to come, and it all came from these different books that I was reading that really helped me understand myself and build confidence and also understand other people. I was so excited about these things that I was learning about money and sharing them with everybody that I knew. But eventually I kind of ran out of people to tell it to, so that's what led me to starting a YouTube channel. So one weekend I bought a camera, I put it down, and I started filming without knowing how to edit or even what a thumbnail was. This is gonna be my first video here on my YouTube channel. I just knew that these things that I was learning was completely transforming my life, and I wanted to share that with more people. And how anybody, even if you didn't have all that much money and were just an average person, could retire early. After a few more years of extreme frugality, I was able to save up enough money to buy my second rental property. And earlier this year, I bought it and I renovated it and moved into it. And the income from that allowed me to quit my day job and focus full-time on YouTube, even though I wasn't making really any money on YouTube at the time. Once I ran out of financial books to read, I started to take this habit of learning and bettering myself and applying it to other areas in my life. I started to work on habit building and also increasing my video skills in videography and lighting and sound and editing and all of that. And that was really what exposed me to minimalism, and that was one of the key components of why I quit my job, because I was doing multiple things. I was working at night, I was working during the day, I was starting a YouTube channel, I was renovating an apartment, and I knew that I needed to focus on just what was the most important thing that could make the biggest impact on my life. And kind of applying the principles of minimalism was what led me to quitting my job. And as I've continued to declutter my house and really focus on building some minimalist habits and transforming my life into that direction, it led me to last week, where I was sitting down and wondering how I got to where I am. And it all came down to 1 second in time where I hit play on that first book. Because I opened that first book, it led me into real estate investing and buying my first property, which led me into the FIRE movement and really understanding my finances, which led me into starting a YouTube channel, which led me into videography, which led me into minimalism, which led me into quitting my job and focusing on the things that were really important to me, which led me here. And while I don't know what's gonna happen in the next year or 5 years or 10 years, I don't know if I'm gonna have a channel even next year, but I know that if I had never read that first book, I 100% would not have been able to quit my job. I would not have started a YouTube channel. I probably wouldn't have bought those properties. And it all comes back to this habit of learning, especially on the really important things in life, like money and health and understanding yourself and habits and how to deal with people. All things I learned from this one habit. Even though I hate to ask, if you guys wouldn't mind dropping a like on this video, it's what helps the algorithm push this out to more people, and hopefully I can make a little bit more of an impact. Also, if you want to comment down below, I'm gonna give away 5 copies of Rich Dad Poor Dad to just some random people as a way to try to be that first step. Or you guys can download Audible and get your first book for free with the link in the description. And I just really want to encourage people that if a high school dropout, shy, not overly talented person can reach some level of financial independence in their 20s, and it definitely wasn't through YouTube. I haven't made much until very recently. It's through the other things that I've been talking about that anybody else can do the exact same things. So thank you guys very much for spending these few minutes with me, and I will see you next week.